podcast. Got a very special guest on the show today. Now, a little bit earlier, I was at a facility, Next Health, which is what I consider and what other people consider as well, is the Apple store for health and wellness and fitness and everything biohacking that I'm about. And the person who is responsible for that, sat across from me, is Dr. Darshan Shah. Thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
It's been a long time coming. We've been in conversation for a little while,
Right.
and thankfully I got my butt down here to do this in person. Now, to begin with, can you let me know a little bit about yourself? I understand you were a surgeon for quite a while, from quite a young age.
Right.
And, what were you doing at that particular time? And what was the transition from what you're doing then to what you're doing now and how it's helped you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I come from a family of doctors. My dad was an Ayurvedic physician. We have many doctors in our family, and I was kind of encouraged to go that route since I was a child. And luckily, because of lots of different factors, I was able to graduate from medical school very early. I graduated when I was 21. And I only tell you that because so you know that I have this kind of long history in medicine. So I became a doctor at 21. My first surgery I did was at 21.
Wow.
And I took out someone's appendix. Yeah. I'm like this kid taking out someone's appendix. And that just inspired me to go into surgery, because surgery to me was the culmination of everything you learn in medicine, where you can make a direct effect into someone's life by actually, operating on them. For many years, I pursued surgery. I trained at the Mayo Clinic. I was a surgeon at many different hospitals. I did trauma surgery. I was in the emergency room. I did every kind of surgery you can imagine. And what happened over that time of my career in surgery was that I personally became more and more unhealthy. So what any doctor will tell you is that when you go to medical school, you spend 99% of your time learning how to diagnose disease and treat that disease either with a pill or with surgery. Everything that else that happens before you get to that disease process, we're not taught anything about. So we're not taught about things like nutrition, sleep, exercise, all the other things.
Or prevention, nothing.
Or prevention. Yeah. It's very, it's one of those topics in medical school where for whatever reason, it's just not taught. And you might spend a day on all these topics combined. And things are changing now, but when I was educated in medicine, it was definitely not anything that we're taught. So personally, myself as a physician, I was working 14 hours a day sometimes, taking overnight calls. I personally became fatter, unhealthier. I became pre-diabetic. I was hypertensive. And I looked at myself in the mirror and said, I got to change this. I mean, this is ridiculous. I cannot be a physician and be unhealthy. And I, looked into my own knowledge base and saw a huge gap in the things that I needed to know to make my own self healthy. So I started diving into the research. I love, when I don't know something, I become obsessed with trying to figure out everything else about it. And, between the internet and reading books and going to conferences, within 2 or 3 years, I quickly became educated that there's a lot out there that's used in disease care that we can use in health care and health optimization to prevent disease. But unfortunately, none of that stuff is made available to the general public. That's all. You can't even get a blood test without asking your doctor for it, right?
And
you need a prescription.
You have to twist their arm.
You have to twist
it's
their
tough.
arm.
Like in some countries, like in the UK where I come from, I ask and tell people to go and get their blood test, and they say the doctor won't allow it. They say there's nothing wrong with me.
Right, exactly. And, certain states have made it illegal to get certain advanced blood tests. I mean, there's such a barrier put into place for you being able to take control of your own health that is motivated by the hospital industry, the pharmaceutical industry, because quite frankly, no one makes money unless you're sick. Right? So no one's motivated to keep you healthy, right? Why prevent Alzheimer's disease when you can actually make a lot more profit creating a pill to treat Alzheimer's disease?
Exactly.
Right?
They help with the campaigns.
Exactly. So anyway, I saw this giant gap in my knowledge, and I also saw how the entire medical community was not educated in any of this. And, there are people such as yourself that are trying to educate the public, but just not a place for people to go that has any sort of tie-in with the medical world. And I was able, through what I learned, change my own life. I, got off all my medications, lost 30 pounds, and I started counseling and coaching my patients. So at this point in time, I was a plastic surgeon doing cosmetic surgery, and people were coming to me to change their life by performing a cosmetic surgery procedure, when that was the last thing they needed. What they needed first was to get healthy, to lose 30 pounds, to decrease inflammation, to get off their diabetic medications. But instead, they want to take the shortcut and just have me suck it out or cut it off, right? And I was educating people on all the things that I learned to get myself healthy and telling no to a lot of people to plastic surgery. I even wrote a book about this. It's called Making the Cut. It's on Amazon. 10 reasons you should not have plastic surgery. And everyone should read it before they have plastic surgery, because half the people out there wouldn't do it once they got healthy in the first place. So
that's a great title for a book, considering you're a plastic surgeon,
right,
and you're saying 10 reasons why you shouldn't have plastic surgery.
Exactly. Because at this point, I made a commitment not just to change my own life, but also to change the life of my patients. And so this is that kind of aha moment that I had, that, everything we're doing is wrong in the way the healthcare system is going. How do I disrupt, and how do I turn this whole thing around like I did for myself, right? And we'll talk about telomere tests in a little while. Hopefully that's one of the things you want to talk about.
Yeah. I've had a couple myself.
Yeah, good. So, I went from a telomere score that was higher than my chronological age to one that's half my chronological age. And I was telling my patients on how to do all this, and I wrote the book about it. And then I have a great partner in this business, Kevin. He and I have known each other for a while. We've done a few entrepreneurial things. We just sat down with a whiteboard one day, eating sushi, and said, here's the 50 things wrong with healthcare and why people don't have access, why people are uninspired to go to their doctor, why there's not a place for people to go to take advantage of all the latest technology. How do we turn all of this on its head and do something completely different? And that's when we built the business Next Health. And I invested my own personal time and money into starting this business 2 years ago, and the rest is kind of history. Has taken off. You saw what we've built, and we're looking to expand that all over the country and the world eventually.
Yeah, it's a fantastic facility. Obviously, I had the muscle IV with some additional glutathione and coenzyme, so I'm feeling good and pumped now for this interview. But within that facility, obviously, like you said, you have the telomere testing, microbiome testing, ancestral testing for the design of people's diets, look into the future, to see where you sit first before you make the projection of what diet you should be on, because you have the ketogenic, you have the paleo, it's like there's a lot of conflicting information there. But if you have all these tests that you have in place, you have a better understanding of the direction that you need to go, and it isn't so much, it's not a cookie cutter. So if somebody's coming into your facility there, and let's say, my listeners are into sports performance, they're into bodybuilding, they're into Ironman triathlon, and they want to optimize their recovery. They want to shut down the inflammation. But you've got this long laundry list of, this huge menu of what they can do. Like, how does somebody navigate what they do or what they should do when they come into Next Health?
Yes, absolutely. So that's a great question. And it's not just coming into Next Health. How do you navigate all the crazy amount of information that's out there right now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just total information overload. It's coming from a lot of different sources that you don't know what's real and what's not real, what's influenced by the food industry, what's influenced by the pharmaceutical industry. Like what do you believe and what do you actually take advantage of? And one of the goals of what I wanted to do at Next Health is to lead people through the path of getting the right information at the right time for them. And so, like you said, diet is a perfect example. No one right now in the world should have to randomly figure out what's the best diet for them by trying 30 different diets and then finally settling on the one that works, right? That's uninspiring. It takes a lot of time. You go through lots of up and downs and yo-yo, and that's what's been happening for years. But there's blood tests, both blood tests and genetic testing that we can do to really hone in on what's going to be the right diet for you. So what we do is the first thing we do is what's called the Next Health Baseline. And we measure about 70 different blood markers on you to get a general idea of where you are in health. Now, the blood test that we do, it's just one vial, a few vials of blood, one sitting for taking those vials. And within a week, we get the results and we sit down with you and we talk to you about a lot of different factors. And from there, we guide you into what you need to know and additional testing that you can use. And you sit down with our first consultation where we ask you many questions about your health and we customize a program for you based on what your needs are. And I talked to you a little bit of my wellness wheel philosophy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a wheel basically where there's 12 different aspects of your health. And the way that was created is, everyone always thought that diet and exercise were like pretty much once you got that figured out, you got healthy, right? And then we stuck sleep into that pie by, over the last few years saying, okay, we know we need to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. How do we optimize our sleep? But it's not just about diet, exercise, and sleep. There's actually 12 different things you want to think about. And each one of those 12 things is what we kind of prioritize for you. And then we hold your hand through what tests are going to be the right tests for you, and then what treatments are going to be the right treatments to get you to where your goal is. Usually starts a diet because most people have not figured out what their diet should be like. And my whole philosophy around diet is to create a personalized diet for you. Okay. And the way we do that is we figure out your glycemic variability. Okay. So how your body reacts to sugar and carbs. We do.
And do you measure that just through the blood?
Yes.
Or you actually get a blood monitor?
We can do both. So
Okay.
I start people with a hemoglobin A1C, which
Yeah.
is a blood test that everyone should know what your hemoglobin A1C level is, because diabetes is one of the worst diseases that you can have. And even if you have prediabetes or metabolic syndrome, all that cluster of diseases has to do with your insulin regulation and your sugar metabolism, right? So everyone needs to know what their hemoglobin A1C is, which is a 3-month average of what your sugar is doing in your body. So we do it with the hemoglobin A1C first. If that is found to be abnormal, then we can do glucose monitoring through either little poke in your finger, or what I'm wearing right now is a little patch on my arm.
So you got that like 24 hours.
Yes, exactly. So I've been doing this for a long time where I test my glucose reactivity to different meals and I really hone in on keeping my sugar level under 100 as much as possible as I can.
Right. And do you measure that as well? Like when you do an activity, if you're having a coffee, see what throws it off?
Oh yeah. Once you get the numbers, like I'm a number addict. Like every time I do something different, I'll put the little monitor on there and immediately check what my sugar has done based on that activity or food. And you'd be surprised. Like, I can eat a ton of carrots and not have any glucose variability.
Really?
But then if I eat beets, I do. Like it's like different foods cause different glucose variability in different people. So the whole thing about the glycemic index in food, that was only done on 50 different people when they came up with the original numbers. So a glycemic index is not applied to a certain food. You can get a general idea. It's really applied to you and how different food reacts in your body.
Have you noticed that there's a direct correlation as well based on your ancestral design of the protocol of the nutrients that you should be eating as well?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much having to do with your ancestry and your DNA and how your body reacts to different kinds of foods. And we've had this science, we've known this forever. Like, you read about the Inuit Indians that can eat tons of fat. And like, it's something that we know that every type of person or every type of genetics based on where your ancestry is from has a different diet that over centuries we've accommodated to. But really, this world is so mixed now and people have moved so much that it's hard to kind of pinpoint that just based on looking in the mirror and knowing what your ancestry is. So we do a genetic test to actually test based on specific SNPs, which are segments of your DNA, what's going to be your reaction to fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And so then we know genetically where you're supposed to go as well. So we tie in genetic testing, glycemic variability, and the last piece of this is food sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
So those three things together help us really customize a diet for you down to the specific foods that you should be avoiding.
Yeah. And specifically in people like, for instance, that are into bodybuilding or they're eating frequently, maybe 6 times a day, and they are having huge inflammatory responders because maybe they're not eating humane raised or organic or locally grown, but they're not eating your typical, if they're intermittent fasting 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, they're usually eating 6 meals a day. So do you find within like athletes, for instance, who have these inflammatory responders, is it because maybe they're eating 12 eggs or 12 egg whites a day, so now they shouldn't eat eggs for like 6 months until those inflammatory responders come down? And do you find that it's the sources of these foods, such as, let's use eggs as an example again, high in omega-6 instead of the omega-3s, that these are the reasons why they're having high inflammatory responses to these particular foods?
Yes. So, okay, the answer to the question is yes, but there's 2 different reasons why the answer is yes. So one is when you don't eat clean food, you're transferring the inflammation from the crop to the animal to you. Okay. So if you have a chicken supposedly that's raised just on corn feed versus pasture raised chicken, we know that corn feed is extremely inflammatory. The meat of that animal is going to be extremely inflammatory, and then you're going to eat that and you're going to increase your inflammation just because of that, because of you're not eating the right type of egg, like you were saying, or chicken that has not been pasture raised.
Yeah, it's not just what you eat, it's what you ate.
Exactly. You are what you eat and what they ate. Exactly. Yeah. And same thing goes for beef. You definitely want beef that's been grass-fed, that's been killed humanely. And, all these things matter in the amount of inflammation in the meat that you're eating, and in the produce that you're eating too, in the vegetables that you're eating, right? Because if you have stuff that's been grown, hundreds of thousands of miles away in giant farms that have pesticides on them, they're going to be hugely inflammatory to you because that food has been stored, that food has pesticides, that food has been through a lot before it got to you, versus eating something that's locally grown and organically grown as well. So picking the right kind of food is extremely important. The other part of your question was, does certain types of food cause inflammation during certain times? And that has a lot to do with your gut lining and your microbiome. Okay. So, first example, you use eggs as an example. Even if you're eating the cleanest eggs possible, you can still have inflammation to that egg if, when you eat it, your microbiome does not protect you from the proteins of the eggs from transversing your gut wall, and your gut wall does not prevent that either. So your gut barrier has 2 different things that are preventing inflammatory proteins from transversing the gut. One is your microbiome. One is the actual gut, the gut cells, right? And if both of those things are damaged to that one particular kind of food, you're still going to need to avoid that food until your gut has time to heal.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So do you find as well that, I speak to a lot of people, and people, reach out to me and they're dealing with depression or bipolar-like symptoms and, anxiety. And I always look to their diet. Do you feel that, obviously, some people feel bad, obviously, they get into carb comas if they overindulge a little, but does the inflammatory response in that stomach then lead to a chemical response into the brain, which makes them feel bad? Right. Is that a direct correlation of the food?
100%. So inflammation is the root cause of pretty much every disease out there. Cardiac disease, brain disease. And by brain disease, I don't mean just dementia and Alzheimer's. I also mean depression and anxiety, right? And vascular disease. So, your blood vessels getting damaged and then getting atherosclerotic and then blockages. Inflammation is at the root of all of it. In fact, if you look at the top 10 leading causes of death in the United States, every single one is a root in inflammation, except for car accidents, So that's the only one that we can't blame inflammation for. Right. But yes, all of them do. And inflammation in your gut is inflammation in your blood, because your gut has the most blood supply of any organ in your body. Okay. So anything that's happening in your gut is immediately going to be transferred to the rest of your body. So controlling inflammation in your gut is first and foremost. In fact, that's probably where you can have the most direct control of inflammation, and you can make the biggest difference in the amount of inflammation in your body.
So that should be maybe one of the first tests that people go for, is get a gut microbiome test to see, if they do have any inflammatory responders to certain foods and how they could possibly build back up that microbiome.
I would say before a microbiome test is to do a food sensitivity test. Now that's a blood test where you're measuring actual inflammatory responses to certain food. And the reason I say that is because we have a lot more science around food sensitivity and how to affect that versus the microbiome. The microbiome is still a very new science. There's some good information out there. A lot of things are not known about how you can affect the microbiome with certain foods. You definitely want a healthy microbiome. What I've found in my experience of microbiome testing is sometimes useful to see if your microbiome is healthy, but what you really want to do is just always keep your microbiome healthy, right? If you do that, you can kind of assume that it's healthy, and then you just eliminate the foods that you're sensitive to or have an inflammatory response to.
Right, got it. And, tried to work on, promoting opportunist flora, having a lot of fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, goat's kefir, and having plenty of prebiotics as well as the probiotics, correct?
Exactly. And I don't know what prebiotics that you take, but some of the best ones out there are very easy to incorporate into your daily diet and your smoothies. Like inulin is one of my favorite prebiotics. It's just a powder that you can put into a smoothie and you don't even taste it afterwards. You put in your coffee if you want to. And everyone should be on good prebiotic, more than even probiotics, because your gut is very smart. If you give it what it needs to survive, and if you give it what it needs to grow good bacteria, which is prebiotics, it'll figure out the right kind of probiotic to make. It'll figure out the right kind of bacteria to grow.
Yeah, got it. I've got a supplement company. I'm very careful of what I put in it, make sure I don't have any artificial colors or flavors or anything like that. I also have fermented amino acids, so my fermented glutamine. And I just find when you're having these fermented products, you're providing intracellular energy to your gut. And I used to deal with a lot of bloat, especially when I was going through a phase of just trying to pack on muscle, thinking of calories as opposed to the information of those calories, which makes a huge difference. And I think a lot of people, they just focus on the calories instead of the information. And, that they're just having a huge inflammatory response. Like you said, distended, you feel tired all the time, you have the brain fog. And I had an issue probably about 5 years ago when I only had like 3 hours sleep a night. And I was like, yeah, I'm hardcore. I'm still going to get through the day. And I'm going to use that anger that I've got built up in me to take it out in the gym on the weights. But it got to a time where I was then getting depressed. Yeah. And it wasn't until I started having the IV therapy, various types of treatments and home care that I was able to fix myself, thankfully. And that's what kind of got me into the quote unquote biohacking world, that, okay, I can improve my performance, but I can improve my health. Not only that, I feel so much mentally better, have more clarity. I can retain information. This is what I want to spread. This is why I want to interview people such as yourself, so they can understand that, wow, you may have a short time of period on this earth. Why don't you just make it the best that you possibly can? Not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, because they both have the direct correlation. Like, I've met people that are on antidepressants, they're on medication, but I never see them getting any better. But they have the opportunity to possibly make themselves better if they do these tests. They find out what they should be eating, how they should navigate forward. And it's amazing, as you get older, I'm getting long in the tooth now, but I feel that I'm able to recover and retain, and I feel so much more energetic. Maybe it's from the IV that I just had, than I did like 20 years ago.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, depression is a perfect example of how our medical system is broken, right? When someone's depressed, no one even tries to figure out why you're depressed. They give you a pharmaceutical to change the way your brain is working, right? And so it's a pharmaceutical that changes the way your brain works, that you're stuck on this forever because you've never really treated the cause of why you're depressed in the first place. And the cause of why you're depressed has to do with some kind of inflammation. There's something going on in your body that's not right, that's causing you to feel depressed. And the depression goes hand in hand with you're causing cardiac issues, you're causing gut issues, the same cause that's causing you depression, which is something that's easy for you to know that it's there because you don't feel great, is also affecting every other system in your body, which is killing you slowly, even though you might not feel it.
Exactly.
With the high blood pressure, with insulin problems, all of that. So people should look at depression as not something that is, a mental thing. Anyone out there who's listening to this that's depressed shouldn't think that they have a mental issue called depression. They have a health issue that needs to be addressed. That's where you want to start at first.
So it's going back to that inflammatory responder leading to a chemical responder, that chemical imbalance in the brain.
Exactly.
And, unfortunately, people take medication or an antibiotic and they think it may be healing them, but then it's harming their microbiome even more, sending another signal response to the brain that's obviously going to be a negative as opposed to a positive.
Exactly. Because, this gut-brain connection that we hear so much about now, most of the serotonin in our body is in our gut. Right.
Yeah.
And serotonin is that happy hormone that keeps us feeling great. And the pills are called serotonin reuptake inhibitors because they artificially cause a higher level of serotonin in your brain. But all that serotonin is in your gut. And if your microbiome is not healthy, you're not making enough. And that's where that gut-brain connection goes off. And then that's where another reason why depression comes into play.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, so when it comes to, people have come to your facility, they're navigating through the tests. Is there home care then in regards to, you're an athlete. We know that you have to eat a little bit more than the average person, but these are the sources of the foods. I know that, getting back into bodybuilding myself, I was doing Ironman triathlon and ultra marathon there for a couple of years. But I know that I'm signaling my mTOR pathway, IGF-1. I'm eating a little bit more now than what I was. What do you suggest then to athletes who are eating frequently, but at the same time, you just got to keep these inflammatory responders down?
Right. So a few things. So one is always when you're eating, be mindful of am I eating something that's going to help cut down inflammation? So a lot of spices, as help cut down on inflammation. Am I putting spices in my food, or am I just eating something just like totally bland, right? Mm-hmm. What are things that you can do while you're eating multiple times a day to help really support your body and support your microbiome? So, even getting down to what kind of oil you're using, right? Yeah. Certain kinds of oil are more inflammatory than other kinds of oil.
Like vegetable oils over extra virgin.
Exactly. You also, like we talked about, you also want to know what your body's sensitive to. If you can find someone to do a food sensitivity test for you, I think that's key. Staying away from the foods that we already know from blood testing causes inflammation in your body. And then, like we talked about before as well, eating clean. We can talk about thousands of different ways that you can eat clean. But all that information is out there, right? Eating organic, being very mindful about the labels on your food, where you're getting your food from. The Environmental Working Group on their website has a list of the Dirty Dozen. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
The most likely vegetables to have pesticides and toxins in them, those kind of things. And then, staying away from all processed foods. I think a lot of the athletes that I see, because they have to eat so often, food needs to be convenient. Unfortunately, the most convenient food you have is processed food, which is just full of inflammatory.
Yeah, that health food that's marketed as health food, but it's got 58 ingredients in the bag.
Exactly. And in fact, even all those granola bars and energy bars. I mean, they market themselves as high protein, but it's all synthetic inflammatory
Corn
protein.
syrup. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's is definitely not the right thing unless it comes out of the earth, or comes from the earth, and you don't, it doesn't have an ingredient list, it's probably causing some inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So,
Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah, so I have to be very weird. Like, I've become a bit of a snob when I go to eat out now. I'll just ask him, can you bring the olive oil out so I can actually see it? Because sometimes it, could be a soybean oil, could be a blend. And, there's a company called, I think it's Grove and Vine. Yes. And there's a gentleman, Nicholas, who owns that company. And he's a connoisseur when it comes to olive oil. And he started going to Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere twice a year to pick the best oil. And then friends and family started asking for that. So now he actually does a subscription.
Amazing.
So you can order it, and within 3 months of it being harvested, you've got it there instead of being sat on the shelves going rancid. And there's so many things that you can do there. Yes, it takes effort, but you have to invest your time if you want to invest to have more time. You want to invest in your future, you're going to have to invest some time. That's why I tell people, look, you don't always have to listen to me. It may seem a little biased. Go out there and research yourself. And that's why I love speaking to people such as yourself, because you're giving your professional, unbiased view here on what people should do. And the information is out there. In this day and age, we're talking on podcast. It's fantastic. It's free information.
Exactly.
It's not costing anybody any time, any money except the time that they're investing, which they're going to get back anyway.
Right. It's so true. There's so much great information out there now. People just have to take the time to get educated on it. And then they also have to take the time to change their habits, right? I mean, we spend, food is a perfect example. We spend so little time focused on our diets anymore because everything is packaged and available to us from this food industry, right?
It's marketed.
Exactly.
It gives you that bliss point.
Right. And they made it super cheap too, right? So now it's cheap and easy to get. But the stuff that's cheap and easy is what is killing you.
Yeah. It's funny, I had this conversation with Gary when we went to Sun Life Organics, because I was like, I have to have the $1 billion shake. I'm going to order the $1 billion shake. And he's like, that's $28. I'm like, yeah, but I bet you wouldn't think twice if we were to say, let's go and have a few drinks of a few glasses of alcohol,
right,
and it comes to $28.
Right.
You wouldn't think twice, but
right,
because it's healthy,
right,
it's like you second guess, and it's insane.
It's
insane.
exactly
We don't
right.
think about healing.
Right.
Let's harm ourselves. Yeah, sure. $28, nothing. So we have to change that way of thinking. Like you said, everything's convenience. Everything's marketed here, fancy colors, and you expect the people out there to look after us. It's not going to happen.
Not at all.
We have to look after ourselves.
And that, sorry to interrupt you, but that goes even up to like, I hate to say this, but our government recommendations. I mean, we know that the United States government, USDA, has put out recommendations for years and years about this food pyramid and what you should eat. And now we know everything's been so heavily influenced by donations from the food industry to the research that's all been wrong for so long.
Yeah.
And many companies use USDA recommendations to guide, many countries use USDA in their own countries. So, all the misinformation in the United States has spread through the world as well. And now we know it's all wrong, unfortunately. Yeah. And we really have to take the time as a culture and as individuals to educate ourselves and not just believe what's being told to us.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember, when I got into the fitness industry, I got qualified as a personal trainer, and I'm looking at what my grandfather was eating, and he still eats it to this day. Every morning, it was like a cut of lamb or eggs or gammon, with all the fat on there. I'm like, Granddad, what are you doing? You're killing yourself while I'm eating cornflakes.
You were killing yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Because you think, hey, we're supposed to have grains. It's the biggest portion of the food pyramid, and how we got it all wrong. And he's still there. 93. In fantastic health, mobile. It's like, wow, he got it right.
Right.
And like you said, that they put out the food pyramid, and we, if I was to maybe suggest what my parents should eat, are they going to listen to me or are they going to listen to the government? Chances are they're going to listen to the government.
Yep.
So it's something that we really have to be aware of. Now, one of the things that, like I said, helped me in this space eventually was my sleep. So I quantify my sleep. I haven't got the ring on at the moment, but I quantify it through my Oura ring. And I like it because I do become obsessed with it. I'm like, I gotta be in bed by 9 o'clock. I've got my blue light blocking glasses on for about 2 hours before then, bumping into things because it's very hard to see. But, I'm very conscious that I need to lower my cortisol levels. Now, we're talking about all these biohacks, which is fantastic. But I think what a lot of people do is they tend to miss the low-hanging fruit of what's out there for free. And if we look at our centenarians or the blue zones, there's a lot of practices that we can take from there that doesn't cost anything. Meditation, practicing gratitude, interacting. I'm quite a solitude person, but I've definitely made it my goal this year to interact more. What is it that you think, other than the food, that people can do, like by quantifying their sleep or helping with their sleep? Do they go out and get a PEMF mat, or do they, switch off their mobile device an hour before bed? Do you have any tips that you 100%. Can give out?
I in fact wrote an ebook about this that I can send you a link to, and you can put in your show notes.
Yeah, we'll put all the links in the show notes.
So I read every book on sleep out there, like 30 books on sleep, and talked to some of the top sleep experts. There literally is like 10 pages of information you need to know about sleep. And so I've put it all in a checklist. I basically quantify it I definitely present it to you in two different categories. One is optimizing your sleep environment, and the other one is optimizing your sleep routine. Okay. So your environment means definitely making sure it's blacked out in your room. Okay. And keeping it dark. Secondly is keeping it cold. So 69 degrees, 68 degrees.
Yeah, I got that.
And you can hack that. There's things like the chili pad that you can buy that sits under you, or you can just, turn the air conditioner up a little bit, open a window, that kind of thing, depending on where you are geographically. There's also, as far as your sleep environment, is making sure there's either no noise or white noise in the background. Those are the kind of things that you need to do to make your environment as like a cold, dark cave that our ancestors slept in, right? That's what we're genetically programmed to fall asleep in. And then you also want to think about your sleep routine. And what we've done over the last 10 years is we become addicted to our phones, and we look at our phones all the way up until the last minute we go to bed. And what that's doing is actually turning off your melatonin and increasing your cortisol, and you're just not going to have good sleep. You might go to sleep, but you're not going to have deep sleep, right? And so there's a lot of things around sleep routine as well that you can do, such as, of course, shutting off your phone and keeping it outside of your sleep room, taking a bath before you go to bed, and reducing your body temperature after you get out of the bath. It can be a warm bath, but you want to reduce your body temperature. There's a list of about 20 different things on your sleep routine. I would say also, thirdly, what's really important is, and this is the key, the low-hanging fruit of this, is just admitting to yourself that sleep is important, and you're not a Superman or Superwoman just because you sleep 5 hours a night and you get a lot of work done. You're actually killing yourself and taking years off the end part of this life, So
I think that was the biggest contributing factor for my telomeres being so short.
Right.
And then once I actually hacked my sleep and hacked my health and practiced gratitude and meditation, all that sort of stuff, now my biological age is actually getting younger. And it's amazing what you can do there, because I'll have obviously people come to me all the time. Hey, I'm having problems with developing my delts. I'm not improving my time with my half marathon or anything like that. And I'll always ask, what's your hydration like? What's your diet, and what's your sleep?
Right.
And chances are the sleep's not there, and they're asking for that magic pill, that magic potion, whatever it may be, except they're not hitting that low-hanging fruit. It's like a foundation. Let's not even pick out the curtains or the roof tiles here until we get that foundation in place.
Exactly. You know how many patients I see that I'm having trouble falling asleep. I take 3 melatonin a night. It's not working anymore. And I ask them, well, when do you get off your phone? Well, I just stay on my phone until I fall asleep.
Yeah. And then it's next to their head.
Exactly.
Penetrating their brain with EMFs.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So sleep is extremely important. And, there's really not a lot you need to know. It's just a specific amount of information that you can read 100 books on sleep and they'll all say the same thing over and over again. So I can, give you this summary that I've written, and you can,
please
you can share that with your
it'll be very handy.
Like. Sure.
Be very handy.
Sure.
Because, we have become a product of our environment, unfortunately. And, it's hard to control, but we can definitely keep our head afloat there.
Right.
And when it comes to, as well, obviously we hack our sleep. And what about, I travel a lot. I haven't had a weekend home for about 5 weeks now, and I probably won't for another 3 or 4. So I'm always traveling and I'm battling with time zones. I do wear the glasses. I have the hydrogen-rich water, the Trucy tablets, and I do whatever I can. So maybe I'm fasting depending on where I'm going, and I'll ground myself as soon as I get to wherever I'm going, just so I can go straight into my meetings, my seminars, whatever I've got to conduct, because chances are I'm going to get in and get out of wherever I'm going pretty quickly, so I need to be efficient. I should imagine you travel quite a bit as well. You mentioned before you travel to Mumbai. What advice can you give in regards to hacking that area, that time zone when you could be possibly dealing with jet lag?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, travel has become a part of modern existence now, and we have to learn to deal with it. We actually set our health back quite a bit traveling, but it's just something that we have to deal with, and we have to try to find a way around, i.e. hacking it, right? And you said a few things that are very important. While you're traveling, fasting is very good, okay, because your body has a easier time resetting its circadian rhythms when it's not dealing with the food part of it. So there's a few different things that affect your circadian rhythm. One is light, right? One is your sleep, and one is food. So if you eliminate food from that equation, the only other things are light and your sleep. So light, you want to make sure that for your destination that you're getting your brain accustomed to the right wavelength of light, either red or blue light, right? So, you want to be on your computer, your laptop, or watching a movie when it's going to be daytime in your destination. That helps a lot too. The other big piece of this is when you arrive at your destination, what are some things you can do? If you're in LA, you can come to Next Health, but if you're not, you want to find a place that has cryotherapy. Cryotherapy is great at immediately reducing the inflammation that you experience during any kind of travel. So a quick cryo session in and out is very helpful. Or if you get into your hotel room, just take a quick cold shower. That's another way of doing it. Secondly, you're extremely dehydrated, so drink a lot of water when you get to your destination, or get an IV if you find a place that can give you IV rehydration. Drinking water you can definitely get there, but it's a lot of water you need, and getting it intravenously really helps you just kind of kick into the right mode as well.
Okay, got it. All right, perfect. Tell me now, what is a day in a life for you like? When it comes to, obviously, everything about optimizing health.
Right.
So can you just walk us through a day in regards to what you do? Like, do you wake up and practice gratitude? Do you fast through until the afternoon? Do you follow pretty much a ketogenic diet? Do you switch your phone off? Do you have EMF blocking curtains, or what give us an insight?
So further, I want to say I wish I were as perfect as all the things you just mentioned and did all those things every single day. But even though I know a lot about health, and I think I lead a pretty healthy lifestyle, I'm still human. And so we have to all recognize it's hard to do everything every single day. And the only way that anyone is going to be able to fit as much of this into their life as they can is to build habits around it. So I think habit forming is a superpower. And if you can get yourself into the mindset of how am I going to form the most effective habits that I'm consistent with, that's what's going to give you the best success as being as healthy as possible.
Right.
And so I try to incorporate everything into my morning routine as much as possible. And for me, morning routine has been the number one best method for me to incorporate habits into my own life. And I think for a lot of people, if you can develop a good morning routine, it's very helpful to set yourself off in the right direction. And but morning routines aren't for everybody, of course. Some people, they just can't get up in the morning, and so maybe it's a nighttime routine. But to answer your question is the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I do practice gratitude. And the way I do this, I have this journal called the 5-minute journal, and it gives you a kind of a format, and I write 3 things I'm gratitude for, 3 things I have gratitude for, and also 3 things that I kind of visualize for the day as well. So gratitude, visualization, then that kind of gets my brain going. And then for me, my brain is like on fire first thing in the morning because I drink some coffee with some MCT oil in it as well. And I immediately go into reading because for me, in my life, I if I don't have constant education, I feel like I'm missing out, So I try to read for half an hour, 45 minutes. I do a little bit of writing sometimes too. I'm constantly writing, content and I'm writing a book. And then after that, I go straight into meditation. So I do like a 15 to 20-minute meditation session. I'm a fan of transcendental meditation, right? But there's all different kinds of meditation. You've got to find the right one that works for you.
Yeah.
And then from there, I go to the gym. I do exactly 20 minutes of strength training, followed by 30 minutes of cardio. Come home, make some breakfast for my kids. I skip breakfast. Breakfast is a meal that was put into our lives by big food, Before the corn industry, there was no breakfast really, or people skip breakfast a lot of times. But because big food needed to sell more cornflakes, they made breakfast a required meal of the day. I don't know if you know this or not, but you don't need breakfast. I mean, in fact, this whole concept of intermittent fasting is basically if you skip breakfast and you eat only during the daytime hours, you're doing a nice intermittent fast almost every single day.
Yeah.
Right? So I skip breakfast for the most part. When I was losing weight, though, I ate a high protein breakfast. So, because I had the caloric requirement I needed, and I used protein to kind of get me through that.
So you'd have like a smoothie or a shake.
Right. Exactly. Right. Anyway, so then I go into my day, and my day is always a different smorgasbord of activities, whether I'm traveling, podcasting, seeing clients or patients or building the business. There's lots of different things that we all, I think, fill our day with, but it's very important during your day to always be in the mindset of what am I going to eat for my next meal that's going to keep me healthy, and how am I going to stay active throughout my day so I'm not sitting all day. So I keep those two things in my head. So I'm always kind of pre-planning my next meal. Like as soon as I have one meal, I'll pre-plan the next one. So I don't just do whatever's most convenient to stop by the drive-through, And then I'm always thinking about how can I stay active? If I'm at a desk, like I'm going to set a timer on my watch so I get up every 30 minutes and walk around. I have a walking desk at work. So
I've got one as well. They're awesome.
Best thing in the universe, right?
They're great.
Yeah, it's so much better than even a standing desk. And people
you should have one in here. So next time we do this interview, we'll be at the treadmill.
Let's just do that. We'll put two desks next to each other and just interview walking. Yeah, why not? In fact, I do a lot of interviews for podcasts and patient visits where my head is bopping up and down on the Skype, and it's because I'm on the walking desk.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. So I think keeping that in your brain as much as possible is going to be very important. And then thirdly, recognizing that, we're all so hardcore now, right? We want to get as much done as a day as possible, but you have to recognize there has to be a point in your day where you wind down. So you got to pre-plan that as well. And, every day is so different. So you can't say, I'm going to, cook my meals for the entire week and just take lunch to work every week. Like that never worked for me because my days are so all over the place, but I'm always thinking about the next meal, activity, and the wind down period.
Being prepared. Yeah. Right. Like I followed intermittent fasting along with a cyclical ketogenic diet last year for about 8 months. And I absolutely loved the empowerment of going, wow, you know what? I don't have to take a cool bag when I leave the house today. I love that. Of course, it got rid of a lot of inflammation. And I like the discipline. Like, life can be a white knuckle ride if I don't practice some form of discipline because it has a transcendence effect. So if I don't switch my phone on for about 30 minutes after I wake up, if I make sure that I have a freezing cold shower after I've done my cardio in the morning, it's not things that I want to do, but I do because it provides discipline into other areas of your life, because there's a lot of chaos out there and everything has become, like with Instagram, and it's instant gratification. Nobody looks at sacrifice before success. Everyone wants to go straight to success. And one of the reasons I brought this up as well is, like you suggest that people have like a food allergy test first. But I want to suggest, with your telomere test, could people like purchase that online and get it sent to them?
No, we do everything on site.
On site,
brick and mortar, but Telo Years provides it.
Telo Years.
Telo Years, right? That's Elizabeth Blackburn, who won the Nobel Prize for discovering telomerase. That's her company. So I would get it from Telo Years.
Yeah. I've done Telo Years a couple of times. And that's the thing that I suggest, is like get your get your telomeres tested,
Yeah.
because that could provide you with a scare tactic to then go get your food allergy done, get your blood reports done, and see what it can fix. Because some people are like, well, you know what, I feel good. And then when they get a telomere test, it's like, wow, I'm 20 years biologically older than I am chronologically.
Right. And what I tell people, I like for all my clients and patients to start off with a telomere test at the beginning of their health journey. And not so, it does scare you when your biological age is lower than is higher than your chronological age. Of course, you're just, what's going on? Like, people have this aha moment. They're like, I'm killing myself on the inside on a cellular level. And I don't even recognize it when I feel okay. But I tell people, use it as a scorecard for all the things you've done over the course of the next year. Get it measured like January 1st of every year, right?
Yeah.
Then you have a scorecard of how was your lifestyle over the last year. And telomeres, the more research that comes out, it really is a average of everything that you've done along sleep, detoxification, exercise, diet, heart health, gut health. It averages everything out so that if you've been doing pretty much all of that right, or maybe you've done 10 aspects of your health right and 2 not, it'll tell you if you're going in the right direction or the wrong direction. So it's a fantastic scorecard of overall healthy living and lifestyle.
Let me ask you, because you do the NAD IVs, that's something that I've yet to do. I take the True Niagen supplements and sometimes the Niacel from Thorne as well, but never the NAD. If I was to do like the NAD and like stem cells, for instance, one or the other or both, would that have a positive effect on my telomere lengthening?
We don't know. We're looking at that. There's a ton of research being done. Intuitively, of course, knowing the science, knowing the pathways involved, I say the answer is of course, but I can't tell you that there's been a double-blind, randomized control study on people that have been infused stem cells or NAD and have had telomere expansion with all other variables controlled. Will that study ever be done? Never. How are you going to control all those variables on somebody and say, oh, that was the NAD that caused telomere expansion versus, usually the person getting NAD is starting to live a healthy lifestyle and they're doing more health-related things like eating healthier and sleeping better, all that stuff. So I don't know if we'll ever know for sure unless someone does a really good controlled study. But I can tell you there's a lot of in vitro work being done around telomere extension. There's a company out in the East Coast that's actually testing every compound out there in a test tube and seeing in vitro if it's causing telomere expansion.
Yeah, there's a lot of peptides out there that people are experimenting with as well. Well, I'll tell you what, I will come and do the test. And then I'll do the stem cell and I'll do the NAD, and my life is the same every single day, and I'll tell you my results.
Someone like you would be perfect to test that with. If you keep your life the same every day.
It's Groundhog Day for me. I'm a creature of habit. I like it that way.
I love it.
But I know that we are just scratching the surface, and I could sit here all day opposite and asking these questions. So I'm hoping that we can do a part 2 of this very, very, very soon.
I would love to.
But I really want to just extend my appreciation. And if anybody is in the LA area, you have the facility that I've just visited, and I'm going to go straight back to after this interview. I'm going to get my cryotherapy done and shut down some inflammation. I may be looking at a couple of tests there as well. You have another facility as well here in LA, correct? Whereabouts is that?
We have one in West Hollywood, and by the end of the year, we'll also have one in Brentwood, California. So we'll have 3 in California, and then we'll continue to expand, hopefully, into your neck of the woods soon as well.
Awesome. And how can people find you online?
Very easy. Just go to www.next-health.com.
Okay, great. And I'll put all the links in the show notes to your book, to the socials, to the website.
Right. And my social, my Instagram is @HealthHackerMD. And I'm going to be posting every day on some of the latest and greatest that's out there in health optimization technology, the testing, the treatments, all of that. So I'll make that kind of my home of information.
Awesome. I'll be following closely.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Okay.
Oh, I appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody. And that is the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. We are out. Peace.